Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are live for the 54th episode of Kayfabe with Keaton. And what a great guest to have coming in today. YouTube wrestling sensation, former pro wrestler himself, a manager and a commentator, a jack of all trades, I suppose, in professional wrestling. Let's bring in none other than Zane.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Keaton. This is quite an auspicious day. I'm really happy to be a guest on your show, and I hope to one day be on that lovely collage of pictures in the background with you and all those wrestlers.
Yeah, well, hopefully one day you will be. And thanks so much for coming on. I'm a big fan of your YouTube channel. I first discovered it with Sean. The NWF wrestling. Your take on that? It was quite funny.
Oh yes, that was. It's so funny. People bring up that video almost more than anything else. Like, I still get interviewed 13 years later, and I know you were talking to me about this before we went live. You were going to ask me about Old Man Tronson, and it's like, man, something about that video just really resonated with a lot of people. I think it was just like the youthful spirit and independence, that we don't quite see in today's society. I just remember finding that that documentary that Sean did about it by total accident, and it was gold. I didn't know what I had on my hands, but it's so funny that it still kind of lives on today through like Sean's NWF show and, then the review I did like 13 years ago.
Yeah, it brought a lot of it popularized the NWF as well, after them being away for so many years, and it kind of popularized the documentary. Some, even some NWF wrestlers maybe found it offensive, and Sean liked it. Sean found it very funny, which is quite good, as some people might have been offended.
Yeah, and I think, I was pretty crude in some of those. I was making fun of people's looks, and it's like, I would have written it differently now than I did when I was like in my mid-20s. But I think it's so funny. I think Sean responding to that video was the first experience I had of like the subject of something I was talking about actually like interacting with me on it. And the fact that he was like so positive about it and that he got the humor of it, I think that was really cool. I think if he had been mean about it, and if he was a dick and was like, I hate that you did this, that might have put me off making videos forever. I don't think I could have handled it. But I think that, and then like hearing the encouragement from other people in the business as years went on, I think helped keep me going. But I think that initial like recognition from Sean, I think that looking back, that might have been one of the first times I really thought, oh, this might have legs, this YouTube channel of mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I went on to, you've created a very good career yourself with Wrestling With Wregret and stuff. So I want to start from the start. What's your first memory of wrestling?
My first memory of wrestling. That's tricky because I think my first memory of wrestling might have been me flipping through the channels as a kid and seeing, I don't know if it was Black Scorpion, because it was definitely a case of somebody being masked. They took the mask off and there was another mask, which I'm pretty sure is something that happened during the Black Scorpion stuff. But I don't know. Maybe there was another time that happened, because that feels a bit too early for when I would have like stumbled upon it and remembered it. I would have been like 5 or 6 at the time. My most vivid wrestling memory of when I actually started watching, I think had to be like the Go Home episode before King of the Ring 98, because it was like there was supposed to be a Hell in a Cell tag team match. It was supposed to be like Undertaker and Austin versus Kane and Mankind, and like Paul Bearer is in the cell. Mankind and Kane are on the outside waiting for the baddies. Austin comes out, fights Mankind. Undertaker comes up from under the canvas and beats the fuck out of Paul Bearer. And I don't know who any of these people are at this point. So it's all like, who is this? Why is there this big guy in red and black thrashing at the roof of the cage trying to burst in while the Undertaker's beating this large, rotund man in a suit? And I was blown away by that. I think that was my first like watching wrestling as a fan, and that was the moment that kind of hooked me. But like really what got me into wrestling period were the video games, like the old THQ. It was WCW versus NWO World Tour that first got me into wrestling, because my friend and I had rented it and we didn't know anything about WCW or wrestling, but we just like played the hell out of that game for an entire weekend. I was like, well, now I got to find TNT on my local listings. And then that eventually turned into me going back and forth with like them and the WWF. And, I picked my side, I picked the winning horse. And yeah, it's kind of the rest is history.
Awesome. I think that's a very cool part to get into wrestling. Very cool time to be watching wrestling was with the WCW versus WWF wars. There's obviously a lot of storylines that went on with that. So what was your favorite part of that storyline?
You know, it's because I think it was the first big storyline that I watched as a fan. I think it was that whole storyline, SummerSlam '98, Highway to Hell, where it was Steve Austin and The Undertaker, and they were also like unwilling tag team partners. And there was also, are The Undertaker and Kane in cahoots? That's what they really pounded that word into the ground. That's where I really got, learned what the word cahoots meant. And so, yeah, that was just endlessly fascinating to me at the time. Somebody who, again, knew nothing of the lore, who knew nothing of the history. But I was bought in, at that point. It was like a perfect blend of like the fantastical and, the gritty that, a moody 13-year-old like me would enjoy. And so I think, yes, that was a perfect time to get into it. I think I'm very lucky that I got to, that I became a fan during that time. I think any time before or after that could have been a very different story for me. But no, I think it was the perfect time. I know a lot of other people became fans as well. So during that time period, it was a great time.
Absolutely. I've watched a lot of it back, and I think it's one of the best wrestling storylines ever, with Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon. I just think it's quite cool. Um, but I heard you mention there are quite a lot. Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'll ask you maybe about your first memories of wrestling, stuff like that. Was Stone Cold Steve Austin one of your idols?
I certainly liked him a lot as a kid. And, I probably threw around too many middle fingers as a result of him, in school. But it was, yeah, I think Austin was one of my early favorites, and like The Undertaker and Kane, and then also Mankind. I was just kind of more into those like big, like somewhat mysterious characters that don't seem like they're based in reality. Those kind of characters I like. And like I think those are some of my favorites there, and I kind of like DX, but like at the time. And then meanwhile, like in WCW, I was like a really big fan of like Chris Jericho. He was one of my like early favorites, just because he was acting in a way like that nobody else was doing at the time in wrestling, and he was just this totally different beast compared to like anything else going on. And yeah, I thought he was hilarious. I thought he had great comedic timing. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that I typically just like more wrestling that makes me laugh and makes me just kind of, feel giddy. That I care more about whether or not the storylines are, flawless, or whether the wrestling is impeccable. Sometimes you just gotta have a funny line or a funny spot, or a sequence or whatever, and you've got me as a fan for life.
Yeah, well, I suppose you can tell that you like that. With seeing your videos, you always like to put comedy in it, and it's always quite funny.
Yeah, no, I think comedy has been one of my biggest driving factors. Like, I was a big fan as a kid growing up and reading like the Wrestle Crap website that was run by R.D. Reynolds and the late Blade Braxton. I think that my videos, Wrestling with Regret, is basically a video version of Wrestle Crap. I think just in pure concept, because it's about taking a humorous look at bad things in wrestling, and that's basically what Wrestle Crap is. And around like post grad time, when I was out of college, I was thinking like, well, wow, like, no one's really doing videos about wrestling in the Nostalgia Critic way, because like Nostalgia Critic and Angry Video Game Nerd, they were really big around this time, and it created this whole cottage industry of people trying to ape that style. And I'm totally comfortable in saying I was also trying to ape that style, but I was one of the few people at the time who was doing it about wrestling, which I felt was like, wow, how come no one's doing this? Like, this feels like a place that's ripe for this kind of stuff. And it's Wrestle Crap with video, essentially, and or it's Nostalgia Critic but wrestling. And that was kind of the whole basis of that. Honestly, it was just like seeing that void in the online space and thinking, well, I can do it, because who's more confident than a white guy in his mid-20s,
Exactly. And I'm just going to bring in this comment. I'm guessing they're talking about, I think it was about comedy wrestling. They're asking this. Do you remember Doink the Clown?
Doink was a little before my time. I remember seeing Doink in like a print ad for the Hasbro action figures. I think it's like a 2-page spread. This ad was, and Doink was like on 1 1/3 pages of them. And then you had like in the foreground, you had all the action figures. That was like the first time I ever saw him. And what's really interesting is that the first Doink is actually, he was played by Matt Bourne, who made his bones in the Portland territory, which is where I came up many years later, in the Northwest. So I think it's kind of interesting to have that somewhat link to Matt Bourne. Basically he passed before I had a chance to meet him. I do remember Doink the Clown in general, like Evil Doink. I think when you look back, is a pretty brilliant character. I think that's a type of character that I feel could work today in today's modern landscape. I don't think you could do it beat for beat, but I think you could definitely have somebody who's like kind of a happy-go-lucky individual with a dark side. We've seen that before. I think clowns, there's a lot of room for that. So, I think Babyface Doink, it was silly. It was, cartoonish kid stuff, but like early Doink, that was definitely something unique. They had something with that for sure.
Yeah, I think it would be good to see something like that today. I think it could work, but wrestling fans are just like kind of complaining about any storyline that they don't like, or if there's a Royal Rumble winner that maybe someone that didn't like in the wrestling community, always see problems and everything. So I don't know if it would work, but I would love to see it. I think it'd be cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there that you like the likes of Chris Jericho and Stone Cold Steve Austin, people like that, which I can definitely see. Like they're quite good guys. But did you always want to be a wrestler, or did you or did you always want to talk somehow, like with managing or podcasting?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, my big dream was to, go and be an actor, be in performing somewhere. And so I was a big theater kid growing up. And so I did a lot of that. And then I think, I don't know, I'd say within a year after I started watching wrestling, I had the idea of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I were a wrestler? Like, look at X-Pac, he's so small, I could do that. Or it's like, look at Mick Foley, he doesn't look in the best shape in the world, I could do that. And of course, when you start training, you realize it's a very different ball game. But it's and you learn so much more. But at the time as a kid, I thought, oh, that'd be neat. And then like I didn't really think about it until after high school because I didn't see it as an option to train or whatever. But then like soon after I started college, I saw that Playboy Buddy Rose was running a school in Portland where I'm from, and I was going to university like 2 hours away. So I thought, okay, I can do this. And like, I think having that first phone call and that first kind of email correspondence with Buddy and Colonel De Beers when I started the training was like some of the most like surreal moment of my life. Like, oh my God, like these wrestlers are talking to me and I'm about to like join their secret club. It's awesome, And so I started training, in college and did that for a couple years, started wrestling in 2006. I was not very good. I think if you looked at how I wrestled back then, you probably would have said I was not ready. But some people gave me the opportunity and I did my best with it. I'd always gotten the mental game of wrestling, but the physical aspect of it never really worked out for me. So I did become a manager after like a year of that. And, it was definitely more than my wheelhouse because I didn't get beat up as much. I got to talk. And to an extent, I got to be myself more. I just got to be kind of a louder version of myself. And that was a lot of fun. And and then only in the last few years have I started really branching out into commentary. It became this thing when I started doing work for like ROH, and it wasn't really something I had intended going into that I wanted to do it. But like after that experience, being like a backstage interviewer, doing commentary, now like this is what I want to do. This is where I feel I am the strongest because managing and commentary are very similar in that everyone wants to do them, but there's like no room available because it's already all taken up. So it's a very competitive field, I would argue, more so than like being a wrestler, which is already insanely competitive. So it's been a very interesting journey for me, and the success of this channel, I think, has helped extend it a lot. But it's just been it's been a while. I've got, like you said in the top of the show, I've gotten to wear a lot of hats in wrestling, and I've certainly learned something every hat I've worn.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you've got to meet some pretty good, cool wrestlers, and I saw your channel and stuff. It's awesome. But so you mentioned there with commentary and stuff. You could tell that you wanted to be a talker. You can tell that you are quite good at being a talker. Was that something that you always wanted to do, or after wrestling, did you find that
Yeah,
talking was better?
I feel like I said, I always wanted to be a performer of some sort, and so wrestling was kind of that outlet. Um, and I think once I got into it, because like I didn't want to be a manager when the first promoter who asked me to do it, like asked me, but it was like at that point I was thinking, you know what? Like I know that the longer I'm out there trying to wrestle, I'm kind of exposing myself a little bit. And the more I do that, the less people are going to want to book me. And I think I'll just be jobbing till I can job no more. And, it got to be this thing where I had to make a choice and be like, do I want to keep trying this and looking ridiculous, or can I look ridiculous in a controlled way? Can I be a manager? And so I think once I started doing that and learning the ins and outs, it definitely became more of like what I wanted to do. Like if you offered me now, like to go back in time and, oh, you can be a wrestler again, and like it'll be different. I don't know if I would take that, because I do like not beating my body up. I have great respect for the ones who do it on the regular. But my strength has always been talking way more than the physical aspect. So I'm definitely, way more willing and way more able to just be a mouthpiece or use that aspect, be a non-physical, non-violent individual in wrestling. I think that's my lane.
Yeah, that makes sense, and you can tell that you're quite a good talker. But when you first started wrestling, you obviously trained with some legends. What was it like training with these guys?
It was great. I learned so much training with Buddy and Ed. Their school was like very different than like any other training school I would later see or go to, because they did not focus on like, okay, we're going to do 1,000,000 bump drills and we're going to do 1,000 Hindu squats and then maybe we'll teach you how to lock up. Like it wasn't like that. They were way more into just like really trying to hammer home psychology, and like they would teach you the moves and stuff and we would do them. But it was so much more focused on psychology and timing. Excuse me. And I think, and hearing their stories and getting that perspective of guys who wrestled in the territory style, I think that's very lost. It's very rare now to encounter anyone who's training and who has that kind of connection. And it was, it was just a really cool experience. And as somebody who like, didn't really know about like the whole history of Portland wrestling at the time, and then kind of learning it in a backfilled sort of way, it was really cool to kind of get the opportunity to say like, hey, I was trained by like these two guys who were huge in this territory and who actually worked for the WWF, or, in Colonel's case, the AWA. And, it's just like, it's a really neat kind of feather in my cap. I'm the only one who trained with them who performed the Cow Palace, or, who got, signed to and worked TV and pay-per-view on ROH. And I think they were all doing, it's like, and I was not the best wrestler out of any of them. I was like, sir, by no means was I the best wrestler, but I had a good talking ability. And I guess I was just persistent enough that people kept me around. And I think that's how it's led to this.
Yeah. I'm just going to bring in some more comments here, and then we'll get back to that. But Adam says, "Hey, Wrestling Revolution, Keaton, and hello, Brian Zane, hello to you. I don't know if you read the news, but AEW is moving all out to 3 p.m. and its AEW pay per view is on HBO Max and at a discounted price starting
Yeah, I read that this morning. Yeah, I mean, I think the counter programming thing is so funny. The fact that like AEW will announce shows and then WWE will be like, well, hey, we're gonna put something here, and like that's what they've done. They've done that since the beginning. They did it back when Jim Crockett Promotions was running around. The frequency at which they do it, lately, I think is pretty hilarious, and it doesn't look good for them. I think that there are going to be people who are going to try and watch both shows. There's some insane people out there who try and watch both shows in a day. I don't have the spoons to do that anymore. So, if I choose one show that day, then that's it. I think them moving the times to kind of like accommodate the people who are going to watch both. Sure, I think that's smart. Even though I think AEW is going to bleed a little bit into WrestlePalooza based on that time, because it's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern, and then WrestlePalooza probably starts at 5 or whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see like how that day plays out. I don't think anything WWE has done to announce for WrestlePalooza has made me want to not watch All Out. So we shall see. But it's it's an interesting time to be a wrestling fan because we are more spoiled for choice than ever before, past and present. So, we'll see where the cards fall with that. But it's, it's crazy. That's why I don't talk about it anymore. That's why I try not to talk about the current stuff, because I feel anytime I mention every time I mention current wrestling, it just gives me a headache. So I try to avoid it best I can, just for my own mental health.
And do you think the current wrestling isn't as good as the old days?
I think that it's all subjective, and like it's hard to compare because the wrestling is not the same as it was 25 years ago when I started. The presentation is a lot different. Storytelling has changed a lot. I think personally, I'm just like fatigued because like with all the companies adding shows and everything becoming must see, and now it's not even wait 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks. It's like every 2 weeks, there's some big thing happening. It's the frequency of it. And I do feel that like some of the booking decisions the last year or so, like in WWE, have turned me off to it. Personally, I hate being reminded every 2 minutes who's running the show there. I think it's unnecessary, and I don't like the unfettered capitalism we are seeing with this company. Like the first time we saw corporate logos on the mat, I was like, that's neat. And now it's like everywhere. And it's like we are just being sold more product than wrestling. And it is exhausting. So basically now I've kind of realigned it so I don't cover the current stuff on my channel anymore. It's not worth the effort for me. And that's a big reason why I started doing guest host Raw on my channel to fill that gap. But yeah, you got to the point where it's like, I'm not having fun watching it. I'm not having fun watching it for work. And I'm not having fun making these videos anymore. So it's like, that was when I decided I can't keep doing this. So I don't really stay up to date. I mean, I catch some things on social media, and I'll hear things. And I'll still watch like AEW. I'll watch Dynamite once a week as my recreational current wrestling, where I can just kind of like watch it, whatever. It's fine. It's for me. And then strictly, I think I just want to kind of focus this channel on just being retro from now on, and just like fully recommitting to that, because I feel that's, my energy, my zhuzh, my zest for wrestling life has all come back up since I made that decision, about a month ago. And it's like, I really should have made that decision a while earlier, honestly, but I'm happy I made that decision. So I do stay somewhat up to date, and like I am curious how this WrestlePalooza All Out thing's gonna go, just from kind of like an outsider's perspective. But yeah, it's just like talking about wrestling now is too much of a minefield, and watching a lot of wrestling, watching WWE in general, I'm bored with it. I'm finding myself more bored with it now than I was in like 2009 or 2019 when they were really bad times creatively. But I'm just bored with it now, honestly. It's like and I know there's great athletes, and I know they still have good matches and stuff, but it's like a lot of the stuff they're focusing on is just like, it isn't really doing it for me anymore.
Yeah. And Adam follows up by saying, "That's good. That's good enough to hear. Cool your mental health after watching current wrestling, and Grim watching wrestling is like a job every week."
Yeah, Grim said that. I think, yeah, and it's true. Like, I know what I got into when I became a full-time YouTuber and then decided to be like, I'm going to talk about the current stuff. But I feel that in the last like 3 or 4 years, it's just gotten really bad.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like you said, like Adam says here in the chat, it's like it becomes that point where, it just becomes work, and it's not even fulfilling. It's not fulfilling for me, my personal well-being. It's not fulfilling as a fan. It's not fulfilling monetarily. And it's just like, why am I doing this if I'm just going to keep headbutting a wall? And so that's kind of why. And like, I might get back into covering modern stuff again in the future, but I don't, I just don't have that capacity to do it right now. And then, like, I'm not feeling bad about myself for not having that capacity.
Yeah. That makes sense. After, just because we got through the comments there, I want to get back to you about how you first started training. So a lot of wrestlers say after the first bump at the stage, if you can handle wrestling, or if you can't, if you like it, or if you don't. Did that first bump kind of say to you that you didn't want to do it anymore?
No, I don't think so, because I kept training. Like I said, I trained for another 2 years, taking all those bumps, and then I wrestled for about a year after that. And I think bumping is one of the most fun parts about it. I could take a bump all day. I love taking bumps. Like I something weird about that. Like, I'll take a flat back bump any day. you know, it's just but that's not for everybody. Like you said, I think the first bump can make or break people's dreams. And so I think when I first felt that, it was just like a rush I'd never felt before. It was, because I'm not an athlete. I never did sports growing up. So I don't, contact sports was foreign to me. So, taking that first bump and feeling that kind of like jolt, it's really surreal. As my doorbell's going off, but I think it's just nothing like it. And I think, of course, if you have a shitty ring, it's not fun to bump in it. But I think for the most part, I've been very lucky. And somebody hit me with something, I'll just go bam all day.
Yeah, a lot of wrestlers, like even Chris Van Vliet, the interviewer, he says that he actually stopped doing wrestling because of the bumps. Like, that's how he first decided. But I want to ask you maybe a bit more about your opinions in wrestling, because I know your opinions are quite well known in wrestling. With Wrestling With Wregret and stuff. So I know you don't really talk about current wrestling, but if you don't know about it, just tell me. So have you heard about the Roger Jackson beatdown?
Oh yes, the Raja Jackson thing is a big sticky mess, and it doesn't make anyone look good. I feel like everyone in this scenario looks bad. I mean, and God, I've never seen such a blatant crime being documented in so many different ways. Every step of the way, we see the crime is about to be crimed. And it's just like I said, no one looks good in this, because some of the wrestlers back there who are like on because they see cameras and they may not know who he is, and there's that. And then people getting in his ear and him not being a worker and not knowing what the terminology is. And then him being on the stream saying, I'm going to beat the shit out of this guy now. And then he goes and does it. Like, wow. Why don't you just walk yourself into the jail? It was, and the fact that like some promotions like have the nerve to, even as a stunt or as a take backsies, to announce they're going to book Raja Jackson, I think is completely tasteless. And I really feel for the guy who got beat up. I listened to JBL talk about this on his show recently. Because the whole thing was about, he was giving Psycho Stu a receipt with air quotes. And it's like, JBL said it best. If Raja had just punched him back there backstage when that first altercation happened, like, okay, like, lesson would have been learned. It would have been a dumb thing, but people would have been fine with it. But I think the fact that it was so premeditated, it was so long after the big insult, it's like, what are you doing? It's just like the promotion at Knox Pro taking that chance, the fact that like we are in this era now in wrestling where it's like, ooh, yay, outsiders getting involved. Like, yeah, sign us up. We all want outsiders. It's not just a Kevin Nash and Scott Hall thing. Everyone, bring all the outsiders in, and let's just try and make everything real again. And I think that this was an incident where that came back to bite them in the ass. You know, we know the story now that Knox Pro, at least digitally, have lost their WWE ID deal, and who knows how much more shit will roll downhill as a result of that. But I think it's it was a bad day for everyone. I don't think anyone really looks good in all this. Oh yeah, and they tried to cover poor Psycho Stu for the pinfall after he got literally killed in the ring. Like, oh man, no one looks good. I can't wait to put this in my worst of wrestling 2025 countdown because it's so messed up.
Yeah, it's so bad. You know what has happened. And have you heard about the hate between Seth Rollins and CM Punk?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of that's real or not, and it's just a matter of them taking, if there is real animosity, them taking it and turning it into an angle. Like, yes, that's, I think, what you should do. I think not every time. I don't think every personal beef needs to be settled by turning it into a storyline. But if the money is there, I think it's fine. I don't like the fact that it's like, this is going to be a 2-year storyline. Like, is this, like, we're planting the seeds for Mania 42 main event with these guys? Like, do fans have the patience to go that long? I feel that, you know, the vision, Seth's group is, it's, I don't know, feels very bloodliney. If I'm being honest, feels very derivative of that. And so, do fans have the stomach to have another, 2-year run of a bloodline light sort of thing? I don't know. We will see. I think that, again, the heat between Punk and Rollins, whatever is there, I think has been worked well to their advantage, because you can definitely feel there is like a tension between them. And I think that comes off very well on camera. But yeah, I mean, as far as Punk and Rollins goes as the main feud they're pushing, we'll see. But I mean, like, anything can happen between now and Mania. And I just feel like, it's there, but it's not for me.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And speaking of beef and maybe like not liking each other, I know you were telling me before the show that you and Jim Cornette have made up again. Like, you don't really have any problems with him at the minute.
Well, let's correct that. We have not made up. I have not reached out to him since the video where I trashed him and everything. I don't feel that way about him anymore. I feel like I've kind of gotten over it, and he's going to make his opinions or whatever. I think what happened was I made this opinion about comedy wrestling on Twitter, and it wasn't directed at anybody in particular, because I feel, this thing I was referencing was towards so many people. And so when I said that, I made this comparison to wrestling and the circus, because wrestling got its start in the circus. And anyone who tells you otherwise, wrestling as we know it today started in the circus, and that's not up for debate. So I made this comparison about it, and it was in defense of the clowns. It was in defense of the comedy wrestling, because some people don't want just lions and tightrope acts and motorcycle jumps. Sometimes they want to laugh, and that's what the clowns are for. And so I said, let people enjoy the clown's old man. And that was not directed to any one old man. That was just kind of a royal old man. It was just like a collective old man. But Twitter being how it is, people were going to tag Cornette in it because they thought I was subtweeting. And then Cornette sees that and he blocks me over that, which, yeah, okay. I think now I would have responded to it a little differently, but like, what the fuck? Like, that was just like, considering all that, I felt that there was a lot of history between the two of us. And I felt that he was, I think he was out of pocket. I don't think I was being wrong in what I said. And so I reacted the way I did. And then he got also mad about it. And I don't think he ever brought me up on his show again, but I know he left me a very angry voicemail after he saw that video. And it's whatever now. I'm over it. It is what it is. I'm not going to reach out and send him a Christmas card, but I've, I'm not mad anymore. So That's kind of how I feel. It's like Cornette, he's one of the greatest managers of all time. He was a big influence to me and my character early on. I think if you saw how I looked before I started rocking sweatsuits, a lot of people made those comparisons, whether or not I wanted them. And it just, yeah, I think he's an amazing mind and an amazing talker. But sometimes I just feel his opinions on the modern stuff is just like, yeah, it's a little much. And so, yeah, that's, you know, Cornette's Cornette, and he's going to do what he's going to do. And that's all right with me now.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, although you haven't made up, thankfully you cracked me about that. But although you haven't made up, you don't hold a grudge with him or anything, which is quite reasonable. And so, and then also with wrestling right now, you've mentioned that you're not as big a fan of the product of wrestling right now as you were before. So this question kind of like talks about the topic. So TPN, Toy Plus Network asks, do you like WWE? Do you think WWE is better than AEW?
Yeah, I mean, right now, no, I don't. And again, it's like it's all subjective and it's all what you like. I've lived by the like what you like, don't be a dick for a while. And it's like, if you're going to like WWE over AEW, that's fine. But I don't need you to be like, oh, well, you're dumb for liking AEW. You're this, you're that for liking AEW. It's like, no, man, I just like whatever I'm liking. Like, I don't love everything about AEW, certainly. But I do just enjoy the product and the presentation a whole lot more than I do with WWE. Like I said, I think WWE is just ads. It's formulaic matches. It's a tired formula that they've been doing for way too long. It's the constant, hey, it's the Paul Levesque era. Hey, isn't Triple H such a great guy? Hey, Triple H, we're going to put his bald mug on we're going to replace all the logos with him. It's just going to be great. It's going to be the Paul Levesque show. And so, like, there's all these other things that, and we're not even talking about, the lawsuit. We're not even talking about Vince McMahon. Not talking about any of that. I am basing it on where we are now in 2025 and who's at the helm and who's running things and how things are being done. And again, looking at both the shows, I just enjoy myself a lot better watching AEW than I do when I watch WWE. And I feel that, I'm not going to try and get into an explanation into the minutia of why I feel that way, because I know people who feel the other way don't care, and they're not going to be convinced. And I'm not trying to convince them. I'm just saying, this is what I like. I like the haha shit. I like, high spots. I like certain commentary combinations better. I like certain commentary verbiage better, camera angles, like entrances, lights, like it all makes a difference, and just looking at the products as a whole, I do tend to like AEW more than WWE. I know there are people who like WWE more than AEW, and that's fine. I'm not going to grill them as to why they like it, or I'm not going to say they're wrong for liking it. It's just how it is. And I have come to accept that, it's like, yeah, I like AEW better than WWE. I don't think that having a bias or having preferred channels or preferred companies, I don't think that makes me any less of a YouTuber. I don't know. There's this idea, I guess, that when you become a YouTuber, you sign some pledge swearing to be objective and down the line at all times and never show a preference. And I don't know when wrestling YouTubers were, I don't know when we signed that, because I get so many comments from people, oh, you're biased, you're this, you're that. Like, okay, you're biased too. When you get mad about my bias, it reveals your bias. So, okay, we're just at square one then, what do we go from here? And that's why I think arguing about, wrestling companies, one being better than the other, I think it's very silly, and it's kind of an outdated way of looking at things. I think we were all so raised on the Monday Night War that's the only frame of reference some wrestling fans have, because it's all about it's about TV ratings. It's not really so much about TV ratings anymore. There's so many different ways. There's so many ways wrestling is different now than it was 25, 30 years ago, but so many people in the wrestling sphere continue to look back at that as your reference point. It's why we saw like Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff get hired as like executive producers of Raw and SmackDown in 2019. Because what fucking ideas is Eric Bischoff going to have in 2019? What ideas does he have in 2025? It's like the fact that we see people from that era continue to be put on this pedestal because like, well, they did something then and it was really awesome. Maybe they can do it again, but no, they can't. Like, I'll say this about Eric Bischoff. His best idea was from 30 years ago. Not even his idea. He stole it from Japan. So, I don't know where we started from this. I went on a bit of a tangent, but I feel that to answer the TPN Toy Plush Network's question, I think AEW is better than WWE right now. There. A couple of years ago, it was different because when Punk got fired from AEW, Triple H assumed power, Vince got kicked out, and the bloodline was cooking at the time. All momentum went to WWE. I'm not going to lie and say they were never good recently because they were. But right now, they are not. So...
Yeah, I get you. I think some stuff in AEW could be better as well, with the storylines and stuff. But AEW is pretty good. I think both companies are quite good. But I see what you mean about WWE. Lately. I want to get into a bit about Wrestling With Regret now, just because we're near coming to the end. You said you have an hour at the most. So I want to bring in this comment quickly, but just to mention, seeing it's related to the topic here. So I need to hide this comment, and then TZS Videos says, I love WWW Wrestling With Regret. That is all.
And that's all you need, man. Thank you. Thank you, TZS. I appreciate that.
Awesome. And so you started all this in 2003, I believe, yeah?
2013 is when I started. So I was 20. How old was I in 2013? I was 28 at the time. And started it. It was just kind of a fun little thing to pop me and my friends. And then like I was doing it on and off for those first couple of years. If you watch the history and you watch the release schedule, it was not consistent at all. It was like short spurts and I would stop, short spurts and I would stop. And then like a couple of years in, after I did my like Jim Cornette Gets It Wrong sketch and the top 8 worst heel turns, like that was a big turning point where the channel like blew up. Like after 2 years of like eking along, all of a sudden things just like shot up. And I was like, well, I guess I'm never taking a break again. So it became this thing where it's like, it was getting bigger and getting more lucrative to the point where I had to quit my day job working in television. I was working at a local TV station in Reno at the time. And so I did just started working on it. I cobbled together all my equipment, like an $85 cheap ass camera, like stolen editing software. And I used like a shop light and bounce it off the wall as my main light. And like the product's evolved so much since then, just from a tech standpoint. And yeah, like obviously the sets changed a lot based on where I've moved to. And, but yeah, I think just starting in 2013 as a hobby and then like going full time with it in 2016 was nuts. Yeah, it's crazy to think that I've, like one of my kids only knows me as a YouTuber. Like my oldest kid might know me as somebody who like dabbled in it at the time when she was really young. But I think that, the fact that I've been able to do it for so long, it's been my longest running job / commitment outside of my marriage or what have you. I think it's the fact that I've been able to do it for this long. Being your own boss helps. So, being able to do that has just been a dream come true. And so, and again, it's given me a lot of cool opportunities in wrestling that I probably never would have if the channel didn't blow up.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously keep going stuff is something that you've done, and that's how your hard work paid off. And you're seeing this great product that we see now of Wrestling With Regret. But as I said, I first discovered Wrestling with Regret from watching your NWF documentary. What do you think about the NWF belt being brought back, and to my home promotion, Northern Ireland Pro Wrestling?
As long as the parents are cool with it, man, I think NWF can live on. I think that, well, especially in England. I mean, they teach kids to wrestle starting at what, 8, 9
Yeah.
there. I see, when Pete Dunne debuted for WWE, he's already a 10-year vet. Like, what the, because they train him differently in the UK. I think that, I'm stealing this idea from Luster the Legend, but he had a great idea where it's like you can teach kids to do a lot of things in wrestling without hurting them. Because like the thing that hurts the most is the bumping. That's the one that's like, oh, that can mess up your back, oh, your neck, whatever. But I think you could teach anyone a lot of wrestling stuff that does not involve bumping and like give them like a primer, give them a nucleus to build off of when they start bumping, once their brains and their spines are developed enough. But yeah, hey, NWF, it's never too late. Nostalgia is always hip. So yeah, maybe the NWF Kids Pro Wrestling can make a comeback in the UK.
Yeah, well, it already has. Not the NWF Kids Pro Wrestling, but the belt has. I'm sure you've heard about it. The belt just came back, and the belt just came back to my home promotion, Northern Ireland Pro Wrestling. I actually got the honor of wrestling for the belt against the kid.
Very cool. Yeah, well, it's a whole different landscape there in the UK. So congratulations for that. But it's it's weird. It's crazy to see how just different wrestling is treated just from country to country. Because like when you hear about teenagers training in America, it's like very much an outlier. You don't really hear about that very often. Usually they just have really cool parents, essentially.
And where do you think the parents were with the NWF?
What do I think about what?
Where do you think the parents were with the NWF? Where were the parents?
The problems? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I couldn't hear it.
Where were the parents with the NWF?
Parents. Oh, sorry. Yes, accent. Yes, where were the parents? Well, obviously they seem to be cool with it. Like that seems to. It's like it's funny now because when I made that video, I was not a parent. And like, I think my opinions on doing it might have even gotten more strict, like in the early years of me being a parent. But like I said, it's a fun thing to look back at. And, again, it's a real slice of what life was like then in America, where it's like, I see it in the memes all the time. The Gen Xers are like, we could drink from the hose and we stayed out at night. And like, okay. But it's it's a different time. Can't do that today, especially with the removal of third spaces. We're running out of malls, libraries, all that stuff to do fun things in. But it's well, that's cool. The NWF is in a revival. I see NWF in the chats saying hello, and so yeah, it's crazy. Here we all are. NWF is what brought us together, and that's why we're here today, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. And they said if you haven't already followed this guy, yep, you can follow Brian Zane on Instagram at Brian Zane. You can follow him at Zedman Brian Zane on X, and you can get all your pro wrestling t-shirts at prowrestlingtees.com /wrestling with regret.
Did all my work for me. It's amazing. Yes, thank you for that. And people can always still catch me on I am a recurring character in Juggalo Championship Wrestling. I'm Claude, the eccentric French artist, which is a tweak to Claude, the eccentric French model, which has been a character since the beginning. But working with JCW has been really cool. Like getting to be part of the gathering this last month was a bucket list item for me, real dream come true. And I'm really, I think we're all kind of wondering where Claude is going to go from here because he's made a few appearances. He's had a few gallery showings. And, then after what happened at 2 Day War, maybe things will change. Maybe Claude's going to reevaluate, reassess his goals, his artistic goals in JCW.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. And as we're talking about there, the NWF, the NWF is what brought us all here together, what you just said there. But How did when you first met Sean? How did he approach you? Because I haven't really heard this kind of story. So how did he approach you about the NWF video?
Oh, I mean, I think it was a comment on that video. I don't remember how long ago after I posted the video, but I mean, he commented and he reached out and said, "Oh, this is hilarious." And I think that was when I kind of had the idea to do a follow-up interview with him. I think he's the first person I ever interviewed for the channel was Sean. So it was a funny moment for me, just kind of getting to reach out to him. And so we haven't met in person, but we've chatted, a few times over the years. And again, he helped me and was part of the interview for one of those earlier videos I did. And of course, NWF like had this life of its own, Old Man Trunks and all that stuff. But yeah, it was really cool. I mean, again, the fact that he didn't like the fact that he got the joke and that he was like willing to roll with it, I thought was incredible. And it spoke to a lot to me about the human spirit. And so I think, again, that was a big motivator for me to keep going because, it's like if he can take that joke well, and boy, I was not kind, but if he can take that joke well, then there's hope for me yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the biggest memes or that got pretty popular on your channel was Old Man Tronson. So how'd you come up with that?
I think it was just a natural consequence of the writing where it's like, as I'm watching this documentary, wow, Scott Tronson's kind of a dick. And like, you just like all these different things. And it became like kind of an Old Man Tronson. I would write that in my notes and that became part of the script. And so I think that's just funny that has carried on. Someone many years ago, a fan gifted me, like he had this engraving business or like labeling. So like, oh, if you want a beverage or a cup or something or a flask, we can engrave it or put any kind of thing you want on it. And so some fan gifted me a flask that said Old Man Tronson on it. I still have it somewhere, but it's Old Man Tronson's gonna live forever. And I loved when Sean in that interview kind of debunked it. Like Sean, like Scott Tronson was a relatively young man at the time. Like when he was working at the cable access station, he was only in his 20s. I love that idea that this guy who I think then would have been like in his 40s when the video came out would be like labeled this old man. I got to reach out to Scott Tronson one of these years. And
Did you see an interview with Scott Tronson?
Yeah. I think I saw him on Facebook once. I almost wanted to reach out to him and say, do you know, like you're kind of quasi internet famous because of me?
Yeah.
But that would have been hilarious. I have not done that yet. But it was, that was, and like, I learned a lot. I think it was just that was a fun video to go back on. And so I think, that'd be really funny to kind of like do that again with a whole fresh set of eyes. I did that once. I re-reviewed Ready to Rumble, and I thought that was going to be really hard, but I was actually able to come up with some more jokes for it. So it's like, maybe there is something I could, we could revisit NWF at some point down the line and see if my opinions, if my thoughts on it have changed at all.
That'd be cool to see. And NWF Wrestling follows up with 15 some years later. I would still have handled it the same way. Wouldn't change a thing. Brian, spot on. It was a YouTube comment.
Yes, it was. That was the first way he reached out to me. I still remember that pretty vividly. So, yeah. And like, I'm trying to think how many, like, because I've had other people in the past, like, tell me, like, hey, that thing you did of me was really entertaining. I'm trying to think of those who didn't like it. I know that Vince Russo did not like my impression of him, but we made up later. Like Cornette loved when I did the impression of him way back. So I think that was, again, really motivating moment. I know that Taz was mad at me when I did the video about his run of the WWF many years ago. I don't think I was being controversial when I said that he had a shit run in the WWF. I don't think I was wrong. But he was a bit defensive about it, as is his right. And he reached out to me on a Twitter DM. I was driving to Las Vegas to see Money in the Bank 2016 when I got that DM. I'll never forget it. But it was, it's fun because, like, it's interesting that some people get the joke and some people don't. Like, some people are like Sean Crossan and some people are like Taz. And I would like more people to be like Sean Crossan.
Exactly. And Jolene says, Keaton for NWF champion. Thanks very much. Darwin said, that's a very interesting question here. Just want to get it here before we have to go.
Sure.
He says, well, we went to the Three Arena in Dublin 1 year ago for 52 per ticket. 1 year later, tickets for the same arena were £350 because it was going out live on TV. HHH is taking liberties with the fans.
I mean, I don't know how much of it's Triple H. I'm sure a lot of it comes from higher up than him,
Yeah,
TKO. I mean, that's another thing. And I didn't mention that in my big rant. I think the fact that people are getting priced out and that the cost of everything is so high, like I paid an exorbitant amount of money for Night 2 Mania tickets this year on the farthest back row we could get. I paid 4 figures for those seats, and I had to watch Travis Scott take his sweet ass time making down that ramp to help John Cena win the
That was
championship.
awful.
And I was like, man, I think that was also a big turning point. It's like, man, I feel that every time I come to Mania, even if it's a bad Mania, it's like I still have an amazing time because of the live atmosphere. Not this year. Boy, I did not feel it. And maybe it's because I was in like a different level of the stratosphere when I was enjoying it as opposed to other shows. But it was, that was not a good experience. The fact that they are ramping up the prices, not just for Manias, but just for everything. And, it's good if you can get it. So far, the market will allow it. I just don't think that's sustainable. And I think it's going to bite him in the ass. I think that's another big reason that people are getting turned off to WWE, because like, not only are they getting all these new sponsors, which is presumably giving them a bunch of money, they're also asking the fans to pony up a lot more money just for like a house show. It's just, it's unchecked capitalism gone amok. And so I wouldn't necessarily blame Triple H on that. I would blame TKO because I think that's all them. And, TKO is doing the same thing with WWE that Endeavor did with UFC. And it's not good. I don't think it's good for the biz.
No, exactly. And when the prices keep getting higher, I agree. It's definitely not good for the business. But I want to thank you very much for coming on. I have 2 more questions for you, so just to let you go here.
Sure.
So, what advice would you give to a young content creator like myself who does wrestling as well, who wants to make it big on YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, I think I tell people this a lot when people ask me about being a YouTuber. I think that, first of all, the biggest thing is luck, because, I think there's a lot of other channels in my position, as good, if not better, that have a hard time getting seen and getting blown up like that. I think, honestly, having consistency, having a lot of stuff to look at. You're 54 episodes deep, so it's like, you've been at it for a little bit. And I think, consistency, having a lot of stuff, being lucky, investing in yourself, investing in your equipment and your presentation, finding a niche, find something that sets you apart from the other wrestling YouTubers. It could just be that you're a different personality. It could be the type of content, the type of wrestling you cover, whether it's modern or retro, or, I want to focus on Japan, or I just want to focus on the indies, like something like that. I think I mentioned luck. It's, I think also being communicative with your fan base is good, because, I would tell YouTubers to write back in the comments. Like, don't get into arguments necessarily, but like if somebody has an additional point that helps, bring up yours, you can write back to them and say, hey, that's a great comment, or you can build on that. And I think that's a great way of building an audience early on, because word of mouth is the biggest thing when you're a small YouTuber. And when you have more people in your circle who feel like they are part of something, then they are going to be more game to tell everyone about it. I think if, and you're interacting with these commenters, they feel like they are part of it. And then they're going to tell their friends, oh, you should check out Wrestling With Regret, or you should check out, Wrestling Revolution Keaton, because he does this and this, and he writes back to me, and that sort of thing. I think building a rapport with your audience, understanding your audience, and just being consistent, I think, are the 3 biggest factors to success on YouTube. But of course, the biggest one is luck, and no one can really control that.
Yeah, I agree. That's really good advice. Thanks for giving me that. And what's next for Brian Zane?
Oh man, I wish I knew the answer to that question. I know that, JCW is still a thing for me. I'm still the commissioner at POW Pro Wrestling out of Eugene, and I'm doing commentary for that. I'd love to find new and exciting commentary gigs. People like to make fun of me because, like, oh, like he thinks he's a worker because he has a big YouTube channel. I'm like, no, I was a worker before I had a YouTube channel. I've always been an independent worker before a YouTuber. So, when people scoff at the idea of me wanting work in wrestling, because that's kind of what I want to do, is just like, I think it's very funny because, like, that's me. I am an independent worker. I having to find that balance between like work and life is difficult now at my point in life, but it is still possible. And I still believe that I have a lot to give as a personality in wrestling. So, like I'm always trying to put myself out there in other prominent companies. The channel, like, I think going full steam ahead on focusing on retro, focusing not on current content is going to be good for me. And as far as what's next, I think anything's possible. Like, I never thought I was going to be on Maccabia Mania 3 this year. Never thought I'd work JCW. A few years ago, didn't think I'd work in Ring of Honor. So it's like, I just kind of like take everything as it comes, and I'm just going to keep doing what I do. And I think the rest is up to fate, basically.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. This has been a great interview. You've done very well for yourself, obviously, in YouTube, in wrestling, and things like that. I wish you all the best in your future career and whatever you do as well.
Thank you. You as well. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks very much. Goodbye. So that was a great interview there with Brian Zane. Seems like my green screen's messing up a bit here. So that was a great interview with Brian Zane, and for the next Kayfabe with Keaton, we'll have coming on Evan Ginsberg, who is a pro wrestling producer. He always loved pro wrestling, just like Brian Zane. But he puts his passion in not just the wrestling, but into something he likes and turns it into wrestling, like Brian Zane did with YouTube. So he is a producer who's produced movies like The Wrestler. He's helped produce that. He's helped produce 350 Days, the wrestling documentary, Wrestling Then and Now. He has a new book coming out called Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. Sorry, just newly released. He's also a wrestling manager and stuff, so it'll be awesome to have him on. He'll have so much experiences to share, especially working with Mickey Rourke and people like that. And he also has memories with all the old professional wrestlers. So this is going to be an awesome interview. And for the next NIPW show, Breakout 5 and Breakout 6 in the Lions Den Pro Wrestling Dojo, that'll be Friday 5th of September and Friday at 8 p.m. And then Saturday 6th of September at 6 p.m. I'll be pretty cool, and you can get your tickets at nipw.sumupstore.com. There's the banner for it, so you can tip it up now, nipw.sumupstore.com. And then for Northern Irish Wrestling, the Foil Rumble too. This will be the second ever Foil Rumble, which you can get your tickets there for Foil Rumble. Tuned in project www.tickettailor.com, and then that's the rest of it up there. So that'll be absolutely incredible show. We can't wait to see that. Hopefully we'll get them on for another podcast again. Same, we've got them on before. Camel Cray is awesome. And yep, that was an awesome podcast. And Wrestling With Regret comments saying thanks for having me on. So awesome. Thanks so much for coming on as well. So this was a great show. Hope everybody's enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll see you for the next one with Evan Ginsberg and the next NWF Forward, which is live on Thursday with the LDN Capital Champion Stevie Fee. So don't miss that, and hopefully we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.